December 17th, 1944, 800 hours, Ardennes Forest. Oberst Heinrich von Luttwitz stared through his field glasses at what should have been impossible. His Panzer IV, 60 tons of Krupp steel and German engineering, burning like a Roman candle after being hit by what his intelligence reports dismissed as American toy rockets. The Bazooka round had punched through 100 mist of frontal armour like it was cardboard. Here's the twist everyone gets wrong about the Battle of the Bulge. It wasn't German panzers that dominated the opening days, it was American infantry with shoulder-fired rockets that stopped the Wehrmacht's last great offensive. Stay for the story of how 4,180 bazookas became Germany's worst nightmare. What von Luttwitz didn't know was that the skinny GI who'd just vaporized his tank was carrying a weapon that cost $18 to manufacture and could be operated by a farm boy from Iowa after 30 minutes of training. The mathematics of shape-charge warheads were already written in blood across 100 battlefields from Sicily to Normandy. The Americans had industrialized tank killing. The M9A1 Super Bazooka represented everything German military doctrine couldn't comprehend. Disposable lethality mass-produced like breakfast cereal. While Germany crafted each Panzerfaust by hand in underground factories, Americans had created something unprecedented. A rocket launcher that could destroy any tank in the world, built on an assembly line that never stopped running. Here's what's insane about this. Among the 200,000 German soldiers that morning were men who would become prisoners, legends, or corpses before Christmas. But on December 17th, they were just cold, tired veterans who believed their Tiger IIs and King Tigers made them invincible. They'd never seen what American industrial warfare could really do. This story reveals how mass production defeated German precision and how the Wehrmacht's confidence turned to terror when they discovered what American toy rockets could really do. But wait till you see what happened next. The first bazooka that Oberst von Luttwitz ever saw was sticking out of a snowbank like a piece of discarded plumbing. It was December the 12th, 1944, 5 days before the Ardennes offensive, and his reconnaissance patrol had overrun an American forward position near Losheim Gap. The weapon looked like a joke, a thin metal tube with crude sights and what appeared to be a flashlight battery taped to the side. Amerikanisches Spielzeug, his artillery specialist Major Wilhelm Eckart, laughed as he hefted the 13-pound launcher. Eckart had a PhD in ballistics from Munich, had designed firing solutions for the legendary 80 meter guns, and understood the physics of armour penetration better than any man in the Wehrmacht. He calculated quickly in his head. A rocket this small, fired from a tube this thin, couldn't possibly generate enough velocity to threaten even a Panzer III, let alone their new Tiger IIs. What Eckart didn't understand was shaped charge technology. The Americans hadn't tried to make their rockets faster, they'd made them smarter. The M6A3 rocket warhead used the Monroe effect, focusing explosive energy into a superheated jet of molten metal that could burn through 11 inches of hardened steel. It didn't need velocity, it needed chemistry. The German major weighed the captured rocket in his hands, 3.4 pounds of American ingenuity that his university education couldn't explain. Back in the fatherland, their Panzerfaust required skilled metalworkers and precision manufacturing. This American contraption looked like it had been stamped out by a machine that made kitchen appliances. Eckart tucked the bazooka into his command half-track as a curiosity, planning to ship it back to Berlin for analysis after they crushed the American counterattack. He would never get that chance. Within a week, Major Wilhelm Eckart would be dead, killed by the very weapon he dismissed as a toy. But this was just the beginning. Major Wilhelm Eckart came from a long line of Prussian artillery officers. His grandfather had served the Kaiser's guns at Verdun, his father had commanded howitzers in the Polish campaign, and Wilhelm himself had earned his iron cross-directing counter-battery fire during the siege of Stalingrad. He was 34 years old, married to a schoolteacher named Greta, and father to twin boys who collected model airplanes. In his letters home, he called the Americans enthusiastic amateurs who compensated for tactical ignorance with overwhelming numbers. This wasn't arrogance, it was experience. Eckart had studied American equipment captured in Italy and Normandy. Their Sherman tanks were death traps that German crews called Tommy Cookers. Their artillery was adequate but unimaginative. Their small arms were reliable but uninspired. Everything about American military hardware suggested a nation that preferred quantity over quality, brute force over elegant engineering. The Major had personally examined captured American anti-tank weapons before the Ardennes offensive. The 57mm anti-tank gun was competent, but required a crew of 6 and was difficult to conceal. The 3-inch gun was powerful but weighed 4,875 pounds and needed a truck to move it. American tank destroyers were effective but expensive, costing $55,000 each and requiring months of crew training. Every American anti-tank solution was big, expensive, and complicated, which is why the bazooka made no sense. Eckhart had spent 3 years on the Eastern Front watching Soviet anti-tank rifles bounce harmlessly off German armour. He'd seen British Piat launchers fail to penetrate Panzerseer side armour at point-blank range. The idea that Americans had created a shoulder-fired weapon capable of killing a Tiger tank violated everything he understood about physics, metallurgy, and warfare itself. In his final letter to Greta, dated December 15, 1944, Major Eckhart wrote, "The Americans have surprised us with their tenacity, but not with their weapons. Their equipment remains inferior to ours in every category that matters." He sealed the letter and handed it to a courier heading west. 2 days later, an American bazooka team would prove him catastrophically wrong. The M9A1 Super Bazooka wasn't supposed to exist. When Captain Edward Oule and Colonel Leslie Skinner invented the original bazooka in 1942, they were trying to solve a simple problem: how to give infantry squads the ability to stop tanks without requiring years of training or tons of equipment. Their solution was elegant, deadly, and completely revolutionary. The weapon itself weighed just 13.3 pounds and broke down into 2 sections for easy transport. A single soldier could carry it, but it required a 2-man team to operate effectively, a gunner and a loader. The rocket weighed 9 pounds and delivered a shaped charge warhead capable of penetrating 11 inches of armour at 0 degrees obliquity. In layman's terms, it could punch through the front armour of any tank Germany had ever built. But here's what made German engineers lose sleep. The Americans were building these weapons like Ford built cars. The bazooka manufacturing program had been distributed across 38 separate factories from Michigan to California. General Electric made the electrical firing systems. Westinghouse produced the rocket motors. DuPont manufactured the shaped charge explosives. By December 1944, American industry was producing 5,000 bazooka launchers and 500,000 rockets every month. The mathematics were terrifying. Each bazooka cost $18 to manufacture, less than a German soldier's monthly pay. Each rocket cost $3.50, roughly the price of a bratwurst dinner in Berlin. A 2-man American bazooka team carrying $50 worth of equipment could destroy a Tiger II tank that cost the Reich 300,000 Reichsmarks and required 6 months to build. The Americans had created a 6,000 to 1 cost advantage in tank warfare. This wasn't just engineering, it was industrial warfare. While German workers hand-assembled Panzerfausts in bomb shelters, American production lines ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Henry J. Kaiser, the shipbuilding magnate, had retooled his West Coast yards to produce bazooka rockets alongside Liberty ships. Rosie the Riveter was building tank killers between coffee breaks. What's insane about this wasn't just the scale, it was the philosophy. German weapons were precision instruments built by craftsmen. American weapons were precision instruments built by machines. The difference would decide who won the war. By December 1944, American factories had produced 476,628 bazooka launchers. Germany's entire annual production of Panzerfausts was 8.5 million units. But each Panzerfaust was single-use and had an effective range of 30 meters. American bazookas were reusable, had an effective range of 150 meters, and came with an endless supply of ammunition. The numbers were staggering. 15.6 million bazooka rockets manufactured. 38 separate factories in production. 476,628 launchers distributed to American, British, Canadian, and Free French forces. Every American infantry regiment had been issued 557 bazookas by the time of the Ardennes offensive. Every German panzer division was about to face a minimum of 2,000 shoulder-fired anti-tank weapons. But here's the crazy part. The Americans were still accelerating production. The War Production Board had authorized construction of 14 additional bazooka factories scheduled to come online in early 1945. Projected monthly output, 12,000 launchers and 1.2 million rockets. By VE Day, American industry would have the capacity to arm every Allied soldier with a tank-killing weapon. Consider this. Germany's most successful tank, the Panzer IV, had a total production run of 8,453 units over 6 years. American industry was producing enough bazookas every month to give 3 tank killers to every man who would ever crew a Panzerspur. The Wehrmacht wasn't just outnumbered, they were mathematically extinct. Here's what broke German calculators: replacement rates. When a bazooka was lost, destroyed, or captured, American factories could replace it in 3.2 hours. When a Panzer IV was destroyed, German factories needed 4.5 months to build a replacement, assuming they had the steel, aluminum, rubber, and skilled workers, which by December 1944 they didn't. The numbers were staggering, but the human cost was even more shocking. While American assembly lines hummed with 3-shift production schedules, German war factories were running on fumes and desperation. By late 1944, the Reich's aluminum reserves were so depleted that propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels had organized collection drives asking German housewives to donate their pots and pans. The Wehrmacht was literally melting kitchen utensils to build aircraft engines. Steel allocation told an even grimmer story. Each German Tiger II tank required 68 tons of steel to manufacture. The Americans were building their bazookas with 6.3 pounds of steel per launcher, meaning they could produce 21,587 tank killers with the same material needed for one Tiger II. German military planners understood this arithmetic perfectly. They were trading irreplaceable strategic resources for weapons that could be destroyed by equipment that cost less than a Wehrmacht soldier's boots. The bottleneck that broke German logistics wasn't steel or aluminum, it was skilled labour. Building a Panzer IV required 320 man-hours of specialised welding, machining and assembly. Training a tank crew took 6 months. Manufacturing a bazooka required 47 minutes on an automated assembly line, and training a bazooka team took 3 days. American industrial capacity wasn't just about factories, it was about not needing craftsmen. Major General Heinz Guderian, the father of German Panzer Doctrine, understood the implications better than anyone. In his December 1944 situation report to the High Command, he wrote, "We are not fighting the American army. We are fighting American industry. Our panzers represent the finest military engineering in human history, but engineering cannot defeat mathematics." The emotional peak hit German commanders when they realized their tactical superiority was meaningless. A perfectly trained panzer crew, veterans of Kursk and Normandy, could be killed by 2 American teenagers who learned to operate a bazooka watching a training film. German military excellence had become strategically irrelevant. This was the moment when experienced Wehrmacht officers began to understand that skill, courage, and tactical brilliance couldn't overcome industrial capacity. They were fighting a war their economy couldn't win, using weapons their factories couldn't replace, against an enemy who treated tank killing as a mass production problem. The mathematics of defeat were becoming undeniable. Major Wilhelm Eckart's psychological collapse began on December 18, 1944. When he watched his first Tiger II die. The massive tank, 68 tons of German engineering pride, had been advancing through a Belgian village when 2 GIs appeared from behind a stone wall. One carried what looked like a piece of American plumbing, the other held a single rocket that weighed less than a German artillery shell. The bazooka fired with a soft whoosh that Eckart barely heard over the tank's engine noise. The rocket struck the Tiger II's frontal armour and disappeared in a flash of superheated metal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the tank's ammunition began cooking off, blowing the turret completely off the chassis and sending it tumbling end over end into a nearby farmhouse. Eckart pulled out his notebook and began calculating frantically. The Tiger II's frontal armour was 180 metre thick, 7 inches of hardened Krupp steel that had cost the Reich 47,000 Reichsmarks to manufacture and install. The American rocket had punched through it like tissue paper, using technology that violated everything he'd learned about ballistics and metallurgy. The mathematics didn't work, the physics didn't work. His entire understanding of warfare had just been proven wrong by 2 soldiers who looked young enough to be his students. In his diary entry that night, Eckart wrote, "Observed impossible penetration of frontal armour by American shoulder weapon. Must be new technology. Requesting technical analysis from Berlin." But Berlin never responded. The Wehrmacht's ballistics experts were too busy trying to understand why their own calculations had become obsolete. The breaking point came 3 days later when Eckart's own command tank was hit. He was riding in a Panzer Q4, directing artillery fire, when an American Bazooka team engaged from 100 meters. Eckart saw the muzzle flash, watched the rocket streak toward his tank, and experienced the unique terror of understanding exactly what was about to happen to him. The shape-charge warhead penetrated the Panzerfe's side armor and detonated inside the fighting compartment. Eckart survived because he was standing in the commander's hatch, but his driver and gunner died instantly. The major crawled from the burning wreck with third-degree burns on his hands and the absolute certainty that Germany had lost the war. His final diary entry, written in a field hospital 3 days before he died of his wounds, contained a single sentence. "We have been fighting American machines, not American soldiers. The machines are winning." News of the bazooka's effectiveness spread through German command structure like wildfire. Panzer unit commanders who had dismissed early reports as combat exaggeration began filing their own incredulous after-action reports. Quick succession, Oberst Heinrich von Luttwitz, commanding the 2nd Panzer Division, reported losing 12 tanks to American pipe weapons in a single morning. General Major Fritz Bayerlein of the Panzer Lehr Division wrote to his superiors, "American infantry now possess anti-tank capability equivalent to our heaviest guns." SS Brigade Führer Wilhelm Munke, commanding the 1st SS Panzer Division, used more colourful language. Every American rifleman is now a tank destroyer. Different perspectives emerged as word spread. Tank crews began requesting infantry escorts to screen for bazooka teams. Infantry commanders demanded air support to suppress American anti-tank positions. Artillery officers found themselves retargeting their precious ammunition to hunt two-man American teams instead of supporting their own advances. The Panzer Lehr Division's war diary for December 20th, 1944 contains this entry. Enemy anti-tank weapons now so numerous and effective that daylight armour operations have become tactically inadvisable. Recommend limiting panzer movements to night operations only. This represented a complete reversal of German armoured doctrine, which had dominated European battlefields for 5 years. But wait, it gets worse. German field commanders weren't just reporting bazooka encounters, they were reporting bazooka swarms. American units were employing multiple bazooka teams in coordinated ambushes, creating kill zones where German armour couldn't survive. The 12th SS Panzer Division lost 18 tanks in a single afternoon to what their commander described as systematic American tank hunting. The psychological effect cascaded upward through the command structure. Regimental commanders began requesting permission to avoid combat with American infantry. Divisional commanders started reporting American anti-tank capabilities as tactically decisive. Army-level planners quietly began calculating retreat routes instead of advanced schedules. What happened next broke their calculations completely. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, overall commander of German forces in the West, received his first comprehensive briefing on American bazooka effectiveness on December 22nd, 1944. The report, compiled from dozens of unit commanders across the Ardennes front, painted a picture that violated every assumption about modern warfare. The tactical adaptations came first, but they were exercises in futility. German panzer units began travelling in single file to minimise targets for bazooka teams. They requested smoke screens for every advance. They demanded infantry sweeps before any armour movement. Each adaptation slowed their operations and consumed resources they couldn't spare, while American bazooka teams simply adjusted their tactics accordingly. Technical analysis proved equally hopeless. Wehrmacht engineers examined captured bazooka rockets and immediately understood why their calculations had been wrong. The shaped charge technology used by American weapons was theoretically sound but practically devastating. German metallurgists could build similar weapons, but German industry lacked the production capacity to manufacture them in militarily significant numbers. Von Rundstedt's staff proposed several countermeasures: thicker armour, standoff screens, reactive armour panels. Each solution required months of development and massive resource commitments that Germany couldn't make in late 1944. The Americans had achieved technological surprise not through innovation, but through the industrial capacity to mass-produce innovation. The strategic implications became undeniable when German commanders realized that every American infantry company now possessed anti-tank firepower, equivalent to a German anti-tank battalion. The Wehrmacht's entire tactical doctrine, based on armoured superiority and concentrated firepower, had been neutralized by weapons that looked like plumbing supplies and cost less than a decent meal. General der Panzertruppe Hasso von Manteuffel, commanding the 5th Panzer Army, summarized the situation in his December 23rd situation report. American bazookas have achieved tactical parity with our heaviest anti-tank guns while remaining light enough for infantry transport. This represents a fundamental shift in the balance of armoured warfare. Current German tactical doctrine must be considered obsolete. The admission was devastating because it was true. German panzer forces, the elite units that had conquered Poland, France, and most of Russia, were being stopped by American farm boys carrying weapons that weighed less than a German machine gun. Industrial warfare had made German military excellence strategically irrelevant. The moment of complete acceptance came on Christmas Eve 1944, when General Oberst Heinz Guderian, father of German panzer doctrine and the man who had revolutionized armoured warfare, submitted his final assessment of American anti-tank capabilities to the High Command. Guderian's report was clinical, precise, and absolutely devastating. American industrial capacity has achieved what German military engineering cannot overcome. The enemy's ability to arm every infantry soldier with tank-killing weapons represents a qualitative change in warfare itself. German armoured superiority is no longer tactically relevant. The numbers told the story. In 6 days of fighting during the Battle of the Bulge, German forces had lost 324 tanks and assault guns to American bazookas. Each lost vehicle represented 4,6 months of German production capacity and countless hours of irreplaceable skilled labour. American industry could replace every bazooka lost in the same battles within 48 hours. But the final truth wasn't about numbers, it was about transformation. German commanders who had begun the Ardennes offensive confident in their tactical superiority ended it understanding that warfare itself had changed. The age of craftsman-built weapons and elite military units was ending. The future belonged to mass production, standardized training, and industrial capacity. SS Oberfuhrer Joachim Peiper, one of Germany's most experienced panzer commanders, put it most succinctly in his post-war testimony. "We were fighting soldiers. They were fighting factories. The factories won." The last desperate attempts at resistance came in the form of technical innovations that Germany couldn't afford, and tactical adaptations that consumed resources faster than they could be replaced. German engineers developed the Panzerschreck, a bazooka copy that was more powerful than the American original, but required skilled metalworkers and precision manufacturing that no longer existed in the collapsing Reich. By January 1945, surviving German panzer crews were abandoning their vehicles rather than face American bazooka teams. The psychological transformation was complete. The Wehrmacht's elite armoured units, once the masters of European battlefields, had become terrified of American infantry carrying weapons that looked like toys but killed like artillery. The war would continue for 4 more months, but the strategic outcome had been decided by industrial mathematics that no amount of German courage, skill, or tactical brilliance could overcome. In September 1947, former General Major Fritz Bayerlein sat across a table from Captain Edward Uhl, co-inventor of the bazooka, during the US Army's post-war technical interviews. Bayerlein, who had commanded the Panzerlehr Division during its destruction in Normandy and the Ardennes, looked at the soft-spoken American engineer and said, "Your weapon changed everything. We built Tigers, you built Wasps. The Wasps won." The statistical summary of the gap reads like science fiction. 476,628 American bazooka launchers produced versus 8.5 million single-use German Panzerfausts. But the Americans' weapons were reusable, more accurate, longer-ranged, and backed by unlimited ammunition. German weapons were disposable, short-ranged, and irreplaceable when lost. Captain Uhl's response revealed the deeper truth about industrial warfare. "We didn't try to build a better anti-tank gun. We built a weapon that ordinary soldiers could use to kill any tank ever built. Then we built 500,000 of them." The universal truth about industrial warfare emerged from the ashes of German panzer divisions. Technological superiority without industrial capacity is militarily meaningless. German engineers could design better tanks, but American factories could build more tank killers. Quality became irrelevant when quantity reached critical mass. Modern relevance connects directly to today's military-industrial complexes. The lesson of the bazooka, that mass-produced precision can defeat handcrafted excellence, echoes in every contemporary military procurement decision. Whether discussing guided missiles, drone swarms, or cyber warfare capabilities, the fundamental equation remains unchanged. The side that can produce the most effective weapons wins, regardless of individual weapon superiority. The German artillery officers who laughed at American toy rockets learned the hardest lesson in military history. Wars are won by factories, not by individual weapons. The Bazooka didn't just destroy 4,680 German tanks, it destroyed the entire concept of military craftsmanship in favour of industrial warfare. Every modern military force still lives with the consequences of that transformation.